fiberglass in your sinuses all week, haven't you?
Yeah, I don't know. That's probably why I was feeling a little sick for a little bit. But my body's sorting that out.
Insulation is a pain in the neck.
You're insulated or what?
It is a pain in the neck. It's a pain everywhere, especially when you're trying to roll around in bed and catching on all the sheets. But yeah, I came across a deal. Some guy was getting rid of a bunch of R13 insulation that he had reclaimed from a remodeling project, kind of office remodeling thing, and bought it for $200, and it's about probably 3,800 square feet worth of insulation. So I insulated my gym, and it was enough to basically layer everything twice.
That'll make a big
So,
difference this winter, won't it?
Ran it this way across the plastic and then that way across the plastic. Just cause, and I still have a bunch of it up there, but since I went 2 layers, I was like, alright, good enough. Just gonna leave the rest of this pile up here and
Dan and Susan said, top of the morning to
I'll
you.
get you your own notebook.
Scott says happy Sabbath, he's with us.
Spit the page out?
Yeah, but they do that every Sabbath. She's like ripping pages out for Eric and everything else, and like.
And we have somebody with us from Arizona this morning.
Just like no pages in my notebook.
I've been chat the notebook.
Alright, you want me to try to kick it off?
If you're not feeling it, we can kick it off.
Yeah. Give your greetings to everyone.
Alright, well, happy Sabbath, and it's good to see everybody online. Who would you say was joining us, Mom?
Dan and Susan and Scott are with us right now. And someone's in Arizona, but they haven't said hello, so I don't know who they are.
Oh, great. Well,
Hello, Arizona.
Yeah.
Wish we were there, where it's dry and warm, right?
Not me.
It's pretty warm outside. Have you guys been out there yet?
Yeah, but the humidity's about 90% today.
Oh.
It didn't feel too bad.
I don't know. I guess I just don't notice those things. You live in it, so. Well, it's great to have everybody, and I guess we'll be continuing on where. Was it last week that you and I did the study seminar?
Week before.
Week
Okay,
before.
I was about to say I can't remember.
We're going to continue with that idea about going through the, kind of like walking through the Spirit that Galatians was talking about.
Walking in the Spirit.
We're going to talk about that.
Very nice. Does anybody have any prayer requests or anything they'd like to share before we get going, I guess, or praises or anything?
Well, I mean, of course, there are a lot of people on the prayer list.
Yeah.
Of course, Dan and Susan, and of course, Scott, people that normally join us. There are other family members that need to be prayed for.
Yeah.
Things that are going on.
Oh, always. Yeah. Seems like everybody's busy and doing what they gotta do. One thing, I mean, a few things that I think are praiseworthy on my end. One would be the insulation stuff, as I've been kind of looking out for a good deal on some stuff, and you know, $200 for all that insulation is pretty good.
Was it in rolls, or did you have to roll it up?
I had to go in. I didn't even roll it up. We just stacked it on my trailer, wrapped it in a tarp, and strapped it down.
Debbie just joined us from Baltimore.
Okay.
Welcome, Debbie. Yeah. So that was a good blessing. It was coming across a good deal like that. It's not faced, so it's just like the regular stuff. Good for what I needed it for. And getting it done was a pretty hard project, but my legs were sore from going up and down the ladder, walking all of it up into the ceiling,
No, absolutely.
and then climbing around the ceiling, stuffing it into places. Took a bunch of walk boards up there and just laid them across everywhere, and made it a
Hope
little
your landlord
easier.
appreciates you.
Yeah, well, I hadn't mentioned it to him. I just needed to do it.
Yeah, wintertime's coming.
But that was one. And another kind of cool blessing, I guess, was I've been looking. I was kind of planning on building like a small storage shed for the gym as well, where we could store all of our extra equipment and kind of get it out of the gym so it's not bulking up the place, I guess, is the term. And there was a lady in Roanoke who was getting rid of one for free, but someone else had gotten to it first. And then yesterday, she had contacted me and said that that fell through and told me I could have it. So,
So you just gotta move it.
yep. Which ain't no big deal. It's a metal one, so I'm probably just gonna take it apart and
Put it back together.
load it up, yeah. But so that was kind of neat. You know,
So you mean I'm traveling an hour somewhere with you again?
you don't have to.
Okay.
You can if you want to. But yeah, so that was kind of a neat blessing too. But I guess if that's all, then we'll go ahead and open up with prayer, and then I guess we'll have Simeon kick us off with.
Make sure we pray for Dan. He's recuperating and having a struggle with getting healthy.
Please, we want to remember Patty, of course.
Right, my sister's got
Calvin across the street.
lymphoma and Calvin with cancer.
Calvin across the street. So all kinds of people with.
And you with your hay fever.
Who's Calvin?
He's the
He's the
neighbor
neighbor.
across from
Kind of
mine.
working with.
Yeah, the guy across the street from Grandma.
He was kind of my dad's buddy that used to come over and keep him company.
Gotcha.
He's a sweet Christian man.
So,
And my uncle Al as well. He's got cancer.
I think I started reading the Ministry of Healing, and it seems like there's no better time for that particular message that that Adventists have been given with regards to health than today, in today's time.
When people are sick, they will give everything they have to get healthy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, and the sad thing is a lot of these problems are preventable problems, and illnesses that could go away and completely change if people were willing to change their lifestyle. You know.
Changing one's lifestyle is apparently harder than people recognize when they go to do it.
Oh yeah, I understand that. Okay, so Calvin across the street, Patty, Dad's hay fever,
Dan?
Dan.
Scott.
What is he recovering from?
I think first they diagnosed it with pneumonia, but they're treating him now for some type of chronic yeast infection in his body.
And who else?
Candida.
Who?
Oh, he said Candida's the name for yeast.
Oh. I was like, who's Anita?
And we could have a praise that Scott's back to work after being
Pray for Thomas's
off for a
work
couple of
situation.
months with blood clots.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
The flyboy's back in the air.
that's another consideration for probably a lot of people.
What
Yeah.
is?
Let's talk about Thomas's
Thomas's
Seville's Thomas.
kind of a week his work situation.
Mm-hmm.
His immigration status, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he can't work because of it, so.
Right.
Oh, they need to like re-up their visas or something, or?
Yeah, his got caught in
He's
the
got caught in
government
the
shutdown.
government
They lost his
shutdown.
paperwork.
Yeah, so he hasn't been able to work like, at all.
Very
Hmm.
depressing, as you can imagine. Kind of being just stuck in limbo for, it's probably been a couple of years now.
Wow.
Well, we have someone from Kentucky who's
Yeah,
joined
well,
us this
today.
morning.
Welcome
Wild
from
hair.
Kentucky.
Yeah,
Oh my.
that's a new one.
Wild hair.
All right. We'll have to keep those things in mind. I guess we'll go ahead and have prayer and get to the study. Lord, we thank you so much for the Sabbath day and this time that you've allowed us to come together in the family room to study your word and to seek to understand more about you. We ask that as Simeon presents, that you would guide him and give him insight, help to send the Spirit to guide all of our minds in the discussion as well and to contribute the light you have given all of us. And we also want to pray for those who have health issues and are in need of answers to prayer in those ways. We pray for Thomas and his work situation, for Dan's recovery, and of course we praise you as well that Scott's back to work and that everything seems to be okay with him. And Lord, for the neighbor across from our grandmother's place, that you would be with him in this time as well, as it's hard, and my mom's sister Patty. Please be with all these people, and you are the great physician, and you have the capability to heal and to do wonderful things. And Lord, if it might bring glory and honor to your name, we ask that you would do those things for those people. And of course now as we study, open our minds and our hearts and clear away the things of the world, that we might be able to focus on you on this beautiful Sabbath day. This we ask and pray in the name of your Son. Amen.
I was listening last night to a presentation about Yom Teruah, which is the time of year we're in right now, the Feast of Trumpets. And we were talking about how, the spring feasts were a rehearsal for the first coming of Christ, and the fall feasts are the rehearsal for the second coming. And what precedes his return is that trumpets, which is a loud cry, and how this is the time when we as God's people need to be thinking about how we are going to tell the world what's about to happen, and not hiding it, not resting on our laurels and keeping it a secret, but making it much more prominent.
Yeah, I've been watching a couple of different presentations from David Gates and stuff like that, and he's got a lot of very interesting insights into where things are going currently.
Has he got something new out?
I don't guess it's anything new per se.
I usually catch his videos when they come out, but I haven't seen anything recently.
But I really enjoy listening to him because he's such a sincere person and he really knows truth. So and he really takes it seriously and applies it. But with
Give her something to keep quiet.
he was talking about something that I just instantly forgot.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Trying to calm her down a little bit.
He was talking about how the Adventist Church had changed part of, I guess it's the creed or whatever, from referring to Christ's return.
As intimate.
As imminent.
Imminent.
From imminent.
It took
to,
out the word imminent.
Yeah, and they replaced it with soon.
Soon.
With his soon return. Instead of
Imminent has an urgency to it. It means it's very soon.
Right.
Yeah.
Now we're just saying soon.
Could be close.
Well, that's what he said. He said, we've been preaching this doctrine of Christ's imminent return for about 150 years or so. And he said he thinks that the Adventist Church as a denomination just started to feel embarrassed about, it's been 150 years and, he hasn't come, so maybe we should change the part where it says imminent and just replace it with soon. And he said that soon could be any time, but that imminent is urgent, and it means like nearly, immediately kind of thing.
It means right upon.
Yeah.
Imminent danger is like right now we're in danger.
Yeah, but I thought that was interesting. And he has a lot of different insights about where things are going with like the Sunday laws and things like that. So
There was also a new video that's been going around. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but apparently the Pope is calling for the world to come together on a day of rest.
yeah, well that's been in the
going on
works
for a while.
It's been
But-
going, but something
But
new
it's
that just came
scheduled
out.
for next year.
Yeah.
The meeting.
I've
Yeah.
had several people send me
There's
the
a
video,
date
but I
set.
just haven't had time to watch it yet.
Well, Gates was saying that there's already Sunday laws passed in many other countries. He was saying that in Poland and Hungary and places like
Canada.
that, it's illegal to shop on Sunday. Yeah, in Canada? Yeah, so he said that it's already being established all around. And he said that it's just a matter of time before it's, presented here. And he said that it's going to be presented under the guise
Climate.
of,
Climate change.
of climate change, save the planet, let's do this for the earth and, declare
for our
national.
future. You can see them really on the college campuses. They had a big thing this past week. Save the Earth Day kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was let out of school, and they're all these kids with their heads full of mush out there, talking about, how detrimental the environment is. I was talking to somebody this week about it. People do not understand that the deterioration of the planet, from a climactic standpoint, began after the flood.
At the flood.
Yeah, once the flood occurred, right,
The earth began to
4,400 years
deteriorate.
ago, the earth began to wax old like a garment, just like Scripture says. Before then, Everything was in perfect balance.
It constantly renewed itself.
The canopy protected, the canopy blocked the ultraviolet light. It squeezed the atmosphere down. It was like a hyperbaric chamber. Once that canopy deteriorated, the deterioration of the planet began.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the closer you get to the ultimate end, the more it accelerates and the more devastating it becomes. And that's why you're going to have natural disaster. That's why they've all ramped up earthquakes, volcanoes, storms, all kinds of things. Governments are trying to control all that mayhem and madness in terms of the climate. And they've probably they probably actually increased and accelerated the deterioration by the things that they're doing, because when you mess with Mother Nature,
Let's not use that term.
you don't really know. Yeah, well, okay. You don't really know the effects. It's all trial and error kind of thing. But it's so interesting to think that there are people out there that are being taught and actually believe that because you drive an SUV or a pickup truck or something, that your carbon footprint is damaging the planet beyond repair. I mean,
The flood damaged the world beyond repair.
The environment is constantly trying to come into balance and repair itself. Nature is, but there will come a time when it'll obviously go to the extreme, and these are the things that the Book of Revelation, I think, bring out with the natural disasters.
We just had a new visitor log in from Sweden.
Yeah.
Well,
But the
Nice.
whole climate thing, to blame humanity, we could ultimately say, sin has, of course, caused the demise of the planet. But because of people trying to enrich themselves in political gain and whatnot, they're making issues that are they're making mountains out of molehills when it comes to the things that we could do to stop.
Or they're literally making mountains out of stuff in different islands.
Right. So, it's just funny. People do not have the correct perspective when it comes to the environment.
The video that went around this week was from Doug Batchelor. It just came out on the 18th, and he said some significant things happened in the last few days that I thought warranted producing another Prophecy News update. On September 12th, the Vatican produced a YouTube video of the Pope reading a statement and issued an international news release. In his 5-minute message, he is calling world leaders to Rome on May 14th, 2020, to establish a global pact to re-educate the youth of the world regarding, among other things, how to save the planet. He references his 2015 encyclical on climate change that also addresses Sunday keeping. Whenever the Pope calls for the religious and political leaders of the world to come to Rome and meet with him, I get Revelation 13 goosebumps. I thought you might want to see this, and please pass it on to your friends.
Yeah, see, it seems like
I put the link in the chat window too to it.
Seems like a worthwhile objective, to get young people engaged in something significant like saving the planet. But like I told my friend that I was talking to, the only thing that's going to save this planet is Christ when he comes. When Christ comes the second time, that's when the redeemed will be rescued. Mm-hmm. And then after the millennium, God will make the planet
I was
over.
about to say, even then, it's not saving the planet. He's rebuilding it, restarting.
Going to reboot it. Reboot.
Yeah, so it's just interesting to see those things lining up and coming into play, and
the big issue is, if I can look at you and say, I think your carbon footprint is too high, then I can persecute you. I can say, if your carbon footprint's too high, I need to get rid of you. I mean, it ultimately will go that way.
This is one of the things we're seeing with the utility companies, and this is global, where they are introducing these smart meters.
To try to.
This will enable the government, ultimately, or utilities at the very least, to monitor your usage of electric utilities. And should they think it's too high, they will decide to reduce your allowance of what you can use.
Well, yeah, and I've heard that the frequencies emitted by those are actually used in military weapons as well to make people docile.
Absolutely.
That's
the smart meters, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing, was that and 5G stuff are
5G.
are all frequencies that are used for crowd control
I
weapons.
know a lot of people that are getting the shungite nuggets and putting them on their smart meters and taping them to the meters and putting them inside their homes to protect themselves from the.
Yeah, it's almost getting to the place where the best opportunity or chance that anybody has is just to have a house that's completely off the grid, no internet, no nothing.
A Faraday cage. Just live in a Faraday
Yeah,
cage.
just live in a Faraday cage.
But unfortunately, you can't share the gospel with people without those technologies at this
Well,
point.
I mean, you just have to venture out and you have to
Yeah,
be a
you
little
live
bit
there,
different.
and you live off the grid, but then you go and you
Go to the
travel.
It would just be a different type of evangelism. It's not as widespread as it could be. But then again, the internet, if people aren't looking for your message, they're not going to find it.
And remember, God's not
Not usually.
just relying on one person. He's got to have a whole group of people scattered throughout
Yeah.
the world that will understand these. They'll sing the song of the law and the blood. So they'll understand that, and that's what'll go.
Scott says it's been a theory of mine for a while that a Sunday law will be in concert with climate change legislation.
You know,
A do or the planet will die type of legislation.
right.
One thing I heard this week was one fellow talking about the introduction of the internet, that it was actually part of the plan of the globalists to create this technology and make it free for everybody and get the population so dependent on it that would feel we couldn't live without it. But that internet would also make it possible to invade every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
You see that even in third world countries, almost everybody has a cell phone and an internet connection.
Yeah, in fact, I've been attending these meetings here in Floyd about learning how to operate a business and stuff like that. And they were showing some marketing data about how many people, in terms of the world population, use the internet now. And it was something around like 5.5 billion people who have access to smartphones and or the internet out of the 7.5 billion people in the world. I mean,
That's significant.
that's a massively connected world.
Yeah, 80% of the world.
Yeah.
Well, this guy theorized that they have been putting out all this stuff for the preppers about the potential for an EMP to take the grid down. But he said the globalists don't want the grid to go down because that would eliminate the internet and that would impact their ability to control people's lives. But I think we
At
need
some point, will.
we need to be thinking about more ways that we can use this technology while it's here
Yeah.
for outreach and ways to evangelize and let the world know what's getting ready to happen. 'Cause I'd
There's
say
a lot
we're
of
very
voices
close.
out there. Definitely a lot of voices out there that are crying out through the airwaves.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, we got to be telling people to get ready.
The thing of it is, there's so much information that people have access to. They got to weed
It's
through.
an information overload.
It's an information overload, and that's the other part that the enemy uses. But
But
We
that
know-
all leads in. Oh, go ahead.
we know that our Heavenly Father says, that for the grace of God that bringeth salvation will appear to all mankind. So everyone will be confronted with the truth of the gospel at the appropriate time. And God has ways, 1,000 ways we know not, making that happen. So we can rest assured that every person will get some opportunity.
Yeah.
But this makes a good lead in for the study today about how we are to walk in the Spirit, because unless we are living those lives, we don't have the ability to share with other people.
Yeah, you don't realize the example that you have day in and day out in your normal routine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess
Hey,
so.
Simeon?
We're going to start now.
Sweet. We'll start pretty much where we kind of left off 2 weeks ago-ish. We'll go to,
That was a lot of
yeah,
short statements.
what?
Well, kind of off-ish, a few weeks ago-ish.
We'll go to Galatians 5:19.
You can do the trumpet a certain sound, Simeon.
Give the trumpet a certain sound.
Yeah, that's an important element from Scripture where it says, if you don't sound the trumpet like it means something, people won't pay attention.
You see Galatians 4:5?
No,
Galatians 5.
19. Or 5.
Galatians 5:19.
5. Yeah, we did 6 last week.
Yep.
But this is something they wanted to do when they did 5.
Sure.
And it's a good study to go back into.
Well, yeah, it's just going back over what Galatians was talking about when he said walking in the Spirit, and he listed off some characteristics. And we could either go through one every week, or we can see how far we get into this one.
Let's see how it
So-
goes.
Who wants to read 5:19?
Guess that one.
This is the negative side.
How much of it am I reading? Just 19?
19 and 20.
And 21 as well, or just
And 21, yeah.
Okay. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, reveling, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in the time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God.
Any comments on anything like that?
It sounds like a description of exactly where we're living in today's world. I mean, have you ever imagined a time where we would see witchcraft being promoted and normalized? You know, every generation
the
before us.
interesting thing about that too is I was looking at the definition they used for witchcraft, because I wanted to see what they used for what they meant.
What
when
word
they said
that was?
witchcraft. When they said witchcraft, the definition for it was medication.
Ah, pharmakia?
And also, well, it just said medication, and it also said magic, so it was including those two. And it meant literal or figuratively. I thought that was interesting that they're talking about witchcraft being related to medicine and also being related to magic.
That is actually much more of a deep
Yeah.
pocket, deep area to study than you realize, because when you look at Revelation, it talks about the Babylon who made the nations drunk with the wine of her fornication. It has to do with pharmacology.
Mm-hmm.
Got people hooked on drugs. And where are we right now? Who's the biggest advertiser on television?
The pharmacists.
Pharmaceutical companies?
I mean, did you ever look at these things, you know, if you take this medication, these things could happen, you know, your eyes could fall out, your legs could fall
But
out.
at least your
stop
gas
working.
will be gone.
Yes. And you think, who would take these things knowing that this horrible outcome is the possibility
Yeah.
for something relatively minor, and yet you've got that, and then you've got all this world drug traffic of...
Well, not only that, when you talk about Revelations as well for the getting drunk with the world or the wine of the fornication, you also have the entire U.S. population who have been exposed to pornography in some way or another,
Right.
as well. And that's one of the things that I listed off here as well was adultery and fornication specifically. And that's one of the biggest things in America. We're the biggest producer for like pornography for the entire world.
It's big money.
So I
is
mean,
pharm-
not
so is drugs.
Not only drugs, but
Both illegal and legal drugs. They're the biggest money maker. They're the ones. In fact, I read recently that in several states, especially California, there is no limit to the amount of money the pharmaceutical companies can contribute to political campaigns. So is it any wonder we see all of these things, these laws being enacted, especially there, where they want to force vaccinate the whole population? They want to force people into, they also have this push with all of these mass casualty events that have happened recently. The big push is for better mental health screening, to allow the police to say, well, I think this person has mental health issues.
well, they've been pushing for that
And,
too. About,
and
by gun
involuntarily
control.
commit people to mental hospitals.
They've been trying to push that too about people for gun control, like especially
Exactly.
the liberal side.
So we're seeing coming to the place where everybody is going to be keeping an eye on their neighbor, worried about whether they're mentally unstable, do they have a weapon, do they have a plan, do they look like they're part of a religious fringe group? I mean, all of these things. We're creating this whole environment of suspicion of everybody else, when reality is that the events, like, you know, like a mass shooter or a terrorist, these are very small groups, very small numbers of people. And yet we are creating this whole sense of fear in an entire population over a very small number of things that could not be foreseen or prevented in most cases. And yet the fear factor, combined with people on medication, combined with the whole general world view of where things are going, and that we're all part of an evolutionary process. So
Mhm.
nothing matters. It doesn't matter if we kill somebody because they're
The
just
funny thing too is that
slimers.
America is more of a terrorist than most other terrorist organizations, because it's like the definition for like terrorism not only is to like commit a mass like heinous crime, but it's also to instill like mass fear. And America's super good at that, like to terrorize a nation by like America's a bigger terrorist than most terrorists. By their own definition, they've shot themselves.
add to that the Jesuit movement in Roman Catholicism, and then Islam, which came out of Catholicism, once again a religion that wants to force itself on a population. Do this or die.
Yeah.
Well, I also heard that the Vatican is going to be releasing a new Bible sometime as well. I think called the Bible 2000. And
Can hardly wait.
because the Pope had made some statements that the Bible we have now is old and antiquated.
I think that
So
was already released.
was it?
I think
Maybe
so,
a
yeah.
while back. It might have been an older
I
video.
think that was already released.
I mean, I
That's
think it
already-
was. I think the video I was watching was a couple of years old. But it's just interesting that all this stuff, plus not to mention the fact that anybody who believes the Bible is truly the Word of God, they're called fundamentalists, I think, right?
Yeah.
You know,
So
the
we are.
fundamentalists are labeled as being
Some would
crazy.
say fundamentalists.
Extremist.
Extremists,
And even
yeah.
terrorists.
Anyone who believes the Bible is labeled as an extremist. Because if they believe that it is
They
true.
believe it literally. Right?
Well, so I mean that is true though. I guess I am an extremist.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the just adding to what she was saying is
You're an
like the
extremist
world
by
is,
by comparison to the rest of the population, sure. She was
Well, I
saying
mean,
what?
extremist for the word, believing its truth. It's just like anybody else would be an extremist for some political stuff or a terrorist group or something, or we're just for
Someone
our
say
group.
if you can't be a radical for Jesus, how can you change the world?
Radical, dude.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Elijah.
Oh no, I was just adding to what you were saying that the world is being steered in this direction of basically it's setting itself up for everything that's going to happen at the end. You know, everything's kind of falling into place for the structure that if, everything will be weighing against you. If you believe the Bible, you're an extremist, you're mentally handicapped. You know, if you believe in your rights, you're an extremist and mentally unstable,
But God has not given us a spirit of fear. So for those of us who trust Him, it's what, like Jerry said, the series, not to frighten but to enlighten.
Mhm.
We want people to know what's getting ready to happen, not to make them afraid, but to get them ready, because it's going to get worse before it gets better, but boy, when it gets better, it'll all be over.
Wonder if there's anything about the order that these are listed too.
The order of them?
Mm-hmm.
Dan and Susan
it
say
almost-
these spectator events typically are diversionary efforts, and we really need to be watchful of it all.
Yeah.
And Scott had posted earlier that Florida, according to AOC, Florida will be underwater in a few years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's entirely possible if we have a few more unnatural
Yeah, but they have
natural
been
events.
predicting that 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, the Earth is much bigger
Of course,
than.
here in Galatians, he lists these they're characteristics, but almost like individual subjects.
Yeah.
But in 2 Timothy, he talks about in the last days, perilous or dangerous times will come. Men will be lovers of themselves. Now he starts to get into the characteristic of how all these things are possible.
Do you remember a few years ago, I guess in the 80s or early 90s, the #1 bestseller was Looking Out for Number One. It was about this generation being the me generation. I'm looking out for myself. I've taken care of my own best interests.
Well, I mean, now with cell phones, and of course with the new word selfie, which was added, what, about 2002 or 3, something like that. The selfie was added to the dictionary, whatever. But, lovers of money, it says, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying its power. So,
Scott says, as Obama said, we are people who cling to our Bible and our guns.
yeah.
And
But
Dan
that-
and Susan said, be prepared that it not overtake as a thief in the night.
But that's the character
Mhm.
that is prevalent with all of these categories that are listed here in Galatians.
Is that it's the selfish, self-serving mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so obviously it was a problem for them in Galatia.
Well, I mean, what we're talking about has really existed from, you know,
Yeah, I mean, they
Well,
from
but
they
certainly
from the fall.
even before the flood. You know, I mean, probably didn't take very long. I mean, the first son became a murderer. Think about that.
yeah.
The first son, right out of the garden.
And
became
they
a
were still in a perfect environment.
perfect environment.
You know, there was no sin other than what Adam and Eve had committed. There was no worldly stuff to distract the mind and lead him in the wrong direction. And yet there they were as young men, already going in different directions.
Yeah. So it's startling how. I mean, and of course we're way down. We're dumbed down significantly compared to those people that lived before the flood. And they were supposed to be brilliant, and they were brilliant in a lot of ways. How could they go from, you know, Adam and Eve being created in the garden to God saying, "It's so disgusting, you know, I can't.
I wish I'd never made
I
it.
can't stand it any longer. You know, I've got to end this. You know, you're hurting one another. There's so much violence and corruption. I'm so distraught in my heart. I can't let it go on any longer. I mean, how could you bring God to that place? Can you just imagine? I don't think we have an inkling of what it was like before the flood, how devastating it was. I'm really even surprised that Noah and his family survived. Because to stand up and be counted, to stand up and say, "I'm God's guy, I'm going to obey Him," I mean, was
I'm
probably
going to believe this impossible thing is going to happen.
yeah. I mean, okay, they either just had to write him off as some kind of a kook, or believing that he would not make any inroads into the thinking of the day. But man, it's almost thank God that we're so dumbed down, that we're not to that. We're not brilliantly
level of evil?
We're not brilliantly sinful. You know what I'm
But,
saying?
I was thinking as you were talking about one of the arenas that we're seeing people come closer and closer to when they talk about, you know, the things you can't say, the things you can't do in public anymore
Because somebody's offended.
because somebody's offended.
Him, her.
Hate crimes. We're almost to the point where Orwell talked about with the thought police, where they're going to penalize you for what you're thinking. But the reality is that all sin begins in the mind.
Yeah.
Sin began in the heart of Lucifer with thinking that he wanted the praise and adoration that God received, and he wanted to be God. So the thought police concept is based on a truth that all these evil things that exist in the world began with thoughts and not controlling the mind, not controlling the
Mhm.
thoughts, and allowing the mind to be poisoned by all these other outside external elements that you didn't control. You know, if we don't watch what we're seeing, what we're reading, what we're hearing, those avenues to the soul, all of those things change our mind. We see a generation that believes what the news media has been saying for the last couple of years. If it happened on the news, it must be true.
That's what I was saying. We were dumbed down to the place
And
where we're easily led like sheep on a street.
because we are looking with the eyes, because what the eyes see has affected the mind so that they can't understand.
And there's so much selfishness. People don't really care if something that they benefit from is injurious to many others. They don't care. You know? And it could be something even as simple as driving like a snail on the highway. You know, you're doing your thing, and you don't care less about anybody else. If somebody has to be
I
somewhere.
pay taxes, I can drive how I want.
You know, so I mean, even something like that. But I mean, it obviously gets a lot worse than that. If something's going to benefit an individual, they basically say to hell with everybody else. And that's the attitude that is out there today.
Definitely, that's the
Yeah,
mindset.
and I mean this lists pretty much all of those characteristics of people too, because it even has stuff like variance and strife, and even revelings and stuff.
Right.
What are revelings?
It's like riots and stuff like that,
Yeah.
being unruly.
And how easy it is to take a group of people, especially a bunch of people that are uninformed.
Just take any college, college.
Yeah, uninformed.
Every college I've seen has had riots.
And there's something inside a lot of people, maybe everyone, where they want to be involved with something that means something, you know, that has a purpose. And if you're conned into thinking that, you know, getting rid of the guns or, you know, getting rid of the SUVs or taking...
Building a bridge
controlling
across the
carbon-
Atlantic and stopping the
Yeah.
jets from flying, that's going to save the planet.
Right. I mean, if
That's a lot more driving.
you believe that's a cause to get behind, then, you know, a lot of people, I mean, young people particularly, they have the energy and they have the inexperience to be
And-
caught in that net.
They have the emotion.
And most of the
Emotion.
time, it's all just a bunch of lies too. Like thinking about like the Tesla car, how it's an electric car and supposed to be an alternative. It's more polluted. It's more pollution for like making, right? What would that
In
word
the
be?
process of manufacturing. Oops, somebody's
Yeah. So it's more pollution to have a Tesla car than a diesel. Oh, shame.
She needs help tying a tie.
Sorry. Does anybody know how?
To tie a...
Oh, yeah.
That'd be you. I don't know.
Okay. I've got it started. How off am I? Sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
She was mouthing something to me through the window. I was like,
Yes.
I can't hear you.
That's
so.
life.
I'm so sorry. I
That's
thought you.
fine.
I'm so sorry.
It's fine. We're good. This is casual.
Casual Friday.
Isabel says I can stop barking now.
Good girl.
Watching the family property. So where were we? Oh, we were talking about the colleges. You know,
Yeah.
almost every
I was talking about Tesla
revolution,
cars.
but almost every revolution in history got its start in the universities. The French Revolution was started in the universities of Paris. This is where all the young minds or people with money, you know, the poor people couldn't afford to go to the university, so it was all people with money and influence connected to the government. But they sent their kids to these universities to get their education. And that's where they were taught all of these things to foment this riot that ultimately led to a bloodbath in the streets of Paris. One of the worst epic times in the world history. I mean, they said literally the streets ran red with blood from the number of people that were being executed just because someone didn't like the way someone else looked at them. It was a very violent time, and that scenario is being repeated here, where you see, you know, when I grew up, we had the hippie movement protesting the war, and they started riots, and they started the SLS, the underground, that bombed police departments and bombed
The
various
Make Love
things.
Not War group.
Oh yeah, Make Love Not War.
The ones who rioted and
If you
killed
want to
people.
give peace a chance, you know, they were mad because we were
I am
over
so
in
sorry.
Vietnam fighting and bombing, but they were willing to go bomb things
Yeah.
here to try to give
30
peace a
lashes
chance.
with a wet noodle.
That's okay.
30 lashes with a wet noodle.
This is community service.
But yeah,
That's right.
like I was talking about though, like with like something that college students just don't understand still is that like an electric Tesla car produces more pollution than a diesel truck because you can't dispose of the lithium batteries anyway. Like there's no way to dispose of lithium batteries from a Tesla car.
No safe way.
Well, no, I mean if you burn them, then they leach toxic chemicals like crazy into the atmosphere, and if you bury them, then you have a bunch of trash. Like it's way more pollutive to have a Tesla car than it is to have a diesel truck. So like even like stuff like that, when they protest so much about diesel or fossil fuels, it's like
Not
your
going green.
electric car is twice as bad.
So to
I mean,
go
I
green.
agree that we should be good stewards of
Yeah,
the
I don't think we
resources
should
we
pollute
have.
stuff, but it's like they just don't understand these things. It's just this college that's bought into so much random things that they don't look into it for themselves at all.
Well, the basic premise that is detrimental is that they don't understand that this planet does have an expiration date.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to save a dying horse.
Right, the planet is
A dead
going
horse.
to
A dead horse, yeah.
be
Oh, dying, not
extinguished
dead,
at
yeah.
some point.
Right.
And because you don't believe this, right? You just think, well, time is going to go on forever, and life is going to go on forever.
Well, they already think
So
time
we
has
just
gone on
we need to
forever.
make it as pristine as we can. So I mean, obviously, I think everybody could appreciate that sentiment, but because you are standing on a false premise that things are going to go on forever, not realizing that what this says is things are going to get much worse, and the
But
planet's
the
going to...
world is going to continue to
The planet
deteriorate.
is
Natural
going to
disasters
get-
will
Well,
be
not only
more
that,
and
but the
more
world is going to drop at some point out from under your feet, and you're going to be like, well, now we're in it.
You know,
I got a notice this week about a problem up at Virginia Tech, where one of the dorms is contaminated with black mold. And the reason that they have a problem with mold is because we like this modern convenience called central air conditioning.
Yeah, and it spreads it throughout the whole
And the air
entire...
conditioning creates a moisture situation that leads to mold, which is spread through the air. And so you have people getting sick because of these wonderful conveniences that we've come up with.
that they're not maintained,
Them not being
because probably every 5 years you could...
well. That's the situation that
cleaning.
exists all over the world. Remember, we had the outbreak of Legionnaire's disease on different cruise ships and in buildings. It was because of air conditioning units and bacteria that wasn't being cleaned.
Right.
Everything requires maintenance and
Maintenance.
requires vigilance. We just put these things in and we think they're just going to go indefinitely working the way they're supposed to, when we don't realize everything requires maintenance and vigilance to keep it safe and healthy. But in our quest to have a more comfortable environment, we are killing ourselves. We are bringing disease and death upon our populations because we want everything out of its natural order instead of learning to live the way nature works. We are going in the other direction
You
and
fight
trying,
nature instead
or
of
we're out there
going
trying to
with nature.
modify weather. And what do we see? What's happening? The weather systems are getting stronger and more violent and worse. I mean, what did Houston have this week, or the area in Texas? Some
Right.
places got 4
30.
feet.
It was Texas.
They said 4 feet of
Oh,
rain. Can you imagine? I can imagine if we got 6 inches of rain, everything would be a mess
yeah.
here. But
Right.
40 inches,
Oh, yeah, it's got to be
up to 48 in some places, that's
very
huge.
debilitating.
And they said this is the first time in decades where we've had 6 named storms in the Atlantic and the Pacific at the same time. You know, it's like all of these things are beginning to swirl, and it's becoming out of control. And I think the more we monkey with it, with these different programs where we're
accelerate.
trying to modify the weather,
Well, yeah, I mean, it
we're
was...
accelerating and making it
Nature
worse.
was in balance, and it's been tipped out of it with the flood, and then we just keep on wobbling it a little more.
Keep on jabbing it.
Yeah, we're like, let's try to fix it in the other direction, and it goes a little too far this way, and then comes a little too far back that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, you think about how HARP works. What they do is they send frequencies up to the atmosphere to bounce off of it, and that causes it to lift, and then they drop it really suddenly, and that creates pressure. So that's how you get those storms. You get the atmosphere to pick up and then drop really quickly, and that creates a heat pocket and stuff, and makes it swirl up and have storms. That's how
And
they end up doing
we've seen
stuff.
how they've been experimenting
Hot
on
pocket, you say?
just in the United
Hot
States,
pocket.
steering storms in different directions and hitting them with radio waves
Mhm.
and steering them. And what they end up with are devastating tornadoes and
Yeah.
flooding and all kinds of things because they've learned how to move these things, but they don't recognize that everything that they're doing out of its natural element has an equal and opposite reaction. And ultimately there's somebody who's going to suffer for the things that are being done
Well, I mean, I think they understand that. I think they just don't care.
because of this generation of selfishness. And
Yeah.
you know, the rich think that we can experiment with this poor stupid population and we'll be exempt from any of the consequences, but ultimately everything comes back to bite you. Debbie says they call it entitlement.
Oh, yeah.
And what's the bottom line? Money not being spent to maintain things. We see that just
Oh,
look
all
at our
the time.
roads.
Yeah, that's a good
They
point.
won't spend the money to maintain the roads
point.
to make them safe, and you're driving across potholes, which has a consequence on your car, which may have a consequence on your dental work.
But they will pay a guy a lot of money just to stand in an office and talk about things.
And every charity that's out there, for the most part, has at their head some CEO making hundreds of thousands of dollars, while the charitable cause isn't getting much of anything.
He's getting 10 cents on the dollar, if even.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation, but it's all part of this mindset of selfishness.
But see, that's the other
Yeah.
thing. It just shows how stupid our country is, because it's like you have all these charities that raise awareness.
It's not just our country. It's
Yeah, I
all
know,
over
but
the
like
world.
that's what I'm saying though. Like we're supposed to be the giant country of like educated people. We're supposed to be the country, you know, the business country.
Don't get me started on this concept of raising awareness.
Yeah.
Oh,
But like that's the thing. You
I'll
get
go off on a rant.
you get caught up on stupid like terminology like that, and they don't even realize what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's just so dumb.
Yeah, I mean, everything needs to be fixed.
You wonder what's happened to the whole concept of logic. I mean, I hear the things that are being said in the political arena, the lies that are being pushed out there as truth, and it's causing the population to think that it's truth. I mean, they're just telling these lies over and over, which was the basis of propaganda in the first place. But if you listened to the things they're saying, they don't make any sense, just like AOC's New Green Deal. I mean, it's the stupidest idea. If you sat there and
Common
dissected it,
sense.
it has no common sense to it whatsoever. And yet here are all the Democrats saying, well, we agree with this part, and we think that, it's like they're trying to validate stupidity. They're taking something that is totally ludicrous, and yet they're trying to say, well, there are things about it that are really good. No, there's nothing about it that's really good. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous from its outset, and nobody will stand up and call sin by its right name and stupidity by what it really is. Like someone said this week, they took a woman with a credit score of 430 and put her on the Senate Finance Committee.
Really?
AOC's credit score was 430. She's been a bartender. That's the only occupation she ever had besides Taco Bell.
But what does it say about the people that put her in there?
Put
the
her
people
in
that
there.
voted.
Because they think, I don't know if she was even voted. I think that was manipulated. But
Could have
she
been.
was put in office because they thought she would be the representative of the average person. And I see all these people that think she's brilliant, she's wonderful, and I'm thinking, what planet are you from?
Yeah.
How could you be that foolish? I mean, how can you believe this is even
Drinking
makes
too much
sense?
fluoride water.
Yeah, fluoridated water, probably part of it.
I think a lot of it just stems from like
Debbie says it's a world of narcissist people.
Yeah.
people want someone they feel they can relate to, and especially young people our ages feel like if they had someone around their age or with their mindset and power, then they'd probably support them no
Someone
matter
who
what.
really speaks for us.
Yeah, I almost think of the story of, I forget who Solomon's son was, but after he took over, he had the option of taking on Solomon's counselors or his friends. And
Instead of taking the older, wiser counselors, he picked the younger ones.
was it
who gave him-
Jeroboam or something?
Jeroboam or Rehoboam?
I think Rehoboam. But
Where instead of relieving the tax burden, he said he was going to make it much more.
yeah, well, where he just said his reign was going to be much heavier than his father's before him.
Arrogance.
And basically he took the advice of some unwise counselors, which were young guys, probably around his age, his friends, and it ended up dividing the entire country, the entire kingdom.
It's like saying, let's wipe out all of our government now and put in a whole generation of gamers to run the country.
Oh man.
Oh lordy.
But you think about how stupid
Think about
that-
the Area 51 raid. That's pretty much what the entire country would be. They would try to open up Area 51.
It's really what you call anarchy.
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is lawlessness, but that's where we're headed because we have created so many laws about so many stupid, inane things that the public at large is disgusted, and really their backlash is going to be get rid of it all. When you get rid of it all, you have absolute terror reigning supreme because
Yeah.
then whatever anybody feels like doing, they can do. But we're going to see the world get to that point, not just in the United States, but all around the world.
Oh yeah. And
And it's even to the point when you look in Revelation about the Babylon who says she sits as a queen, and it says, behold, in one day she'll fall, and all of the ones that supported her will come after her. You know, they'll turn on themselves. They'll eat their own. You know, it's going to be a terrible scenario.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you have a society full of people who say me, then you're gonna have people who, or, you know, when it falls, yeah, of course they're gonna eat their own because it's like it's in my best interest to get rid of the weak guy now.
Susan says, sadly, in the time of Samuel, the people demanded a king despite God's warning of what the king would do to them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Same
and
for-
just even though he said like it's gonna be awful, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I
Like,
mean,
they
Make
were
us like all the other nations around us.
I would have told them they can just go ahead and pack their things and get out. Like
We see the same thing happening in the churches, don't we?
Yeah.
They're homogenizing. They're all mixing together and becoming one
It's really
homogeneous
just the
group.
love of-
Nobody's different from
It's
anybody
just the
else.
love of tradition and stuff, and to have, you know, that the traditional kingdom with all the rules and the stern government like Romans had and stuff. It's honestly just wanting to be like other nations. That probably was their downfall, was that they loved tradition too much.
About as ludicrous as the Jews at the time of the crucifixion saying, "We have no king but Caesar."
Yeah.
What a horrible... I mean, they knew what a cruel dictatorship the Roman Empire was.
Yeah, I mean, to
They
them
want,
too.
but they wanted out of it so badly. They were willing to sacrifice the only solution for any of it that ever existed. And that's how stupid selfish human nature is that it gets so blind to the consequences of what it wants
Yeah.
that it just goes for what it wants regardless. Susan wrote, "And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people, and all they say unto thee, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them."
Yeah.
And that's what they did at the crucifixion. They rejected Christ, who was the Messiah they were supposedly looking for to deliver them from sin and all the consequences of evil, and yet that's the very thing they rejected. But I think we can look at some of these things that are existing in Galatians here. I mean, that list of things sounds like a reading out of the TV guide or the newspaper.
if you were to summarize the headlines of news articles that talk about killings or people getting in trouble or
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Someone told me this morning, we were talking about obituaries, and he said that his grandmother told him that the first thing he should read in the newspaper was the sports section, because the sports section was dealing with some who win and some who lose. At least there were some who win. Everything else in the newspaper was about losing, about losers. Well, I thought that was kind of interesting, you know, that, yeah, it's all about the bad stuff that happens. You know, that's all all that the news really talks about is the bad stuff.
It's sensational.
And every publication that's tried to exist on publishing good news
Has
has
failed.
failed.
Yeah.
People won't buy it.
Well, I mean, who wants to hear about it's been a nice sunny day and this person got their braces taken off and
Right, that's not exciting. It's not sensational.
well, it's not emotionally filled with something that's like, oh, that's tragic, that's so crazy.
Well, I don't know. Facebook is full of all those cute videos of kittens and puppies and
Yeah.
sappy stories of people.
But who are those published by? By people.
Yeah.
Not by news. People buy news because they want to hear the shock value or whatever. You don't buy. I mean, there's some people who buy subscriptions, I guess, to like watch dogs play or something. But it's like,
Well, I think we
not a big enough market like
gravitate
that.
toward supporting the news, especially the stuff that's shocking and sensational, because it makes us feel like at least our life is okay.
and also that whole like
By
dog
comparison.
thing, like people watching puppy videos and kitten videos and stuff. Those are all things that don't even have to do with humans. That's not good news about anything human-wise. It's not news. That's just watching an animal have fun.
It's just a different type of awe.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's the same thing as, like, we're not, it's just interested in what you want, I guess. It's the shock value.
So what do we do to become people who walk in the Spirit? What's required for that? We don't have enough time for that.
It's a good question, I guess, but, I don't know if we want
Want
to
to tackle that one next Saturday?
dive into. Yeah, I didn't know we wouldn't even get that far.
I do want to say one thing that I'm noting that's kind of interesting is that there's a couple of different passages where Paul is kind of going through a list of problems.
He does the same thing kind of over and over.
Well,
in a lot of
I
stuff.
think it's because most of these problems are rather universal, like
Yeah.
you said earlier, and so he tended to have to address them in every church.
Uh-huh.
You know, so at Corinthians. And
I think he also just did a
Colossians,
broad addressing too because
Ephesians.
it covers everyone anyways.
But most of them, if not all of them, I haven't read all of them yet, but the ones that I've currently read all begin with fornication, being the first one he mentions.
Well, that's the biggest issue I think in probably most of the world
Yeah.
because there's for everybody, at least in America, I'm sure it's like that too in most other countries as well. But everybody in America has been exposed to pornography in some way or another. Like there's not one person who hasn't seen
See,
it.
there's
in
a
America
tendency for Christians to think fornication is simply the concept of sex,
without
outside
marriage
of
or outside
marriage.
marriage. Yeah.
but it has to do with all
Well,
sexual
Fornication's a little
lust.
different too. Like adultery is kind of like sex outside of marriage or cheating on a spouse and stuff like that. But fornication has to do more specifically with like pornography and just other things and even lust. Like fornication is even drawn into lust, like looking at somebody and picturing them.
But when I was growing up, you couldn't find pornography in any local store. You had to go to a
Yeah.
special bookstore somewhere to find that stuff. And then it got to the place where, okay, they were going to let it in, but it stayed behind the counter and they covered it with a plain brown wrapper so you couldn't see it. You had to ask for it to get it from someone who would get it from behind the counter for you, but you didn't see it. Now it's piped into your inbox uninvited.
Yeah.
I mean, I spend literally probably 10% of my working time every week going through my server and weeding out spam that's managed to slip through our spam filters, and 90% of it is filthy porn stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the words alone are bad enough. I don't even see the images because my system blocks that.
Yeah.
But I'm looking through these things and I'm blocking them because I don't want my clients to be tempted with this junk.
Yeah.
You know, I feel part of my responsibility as their server
Their
or
webmaster.
yeah, that I'm trying to protect them from this stuff flooding into their inbox, and I can't believe the words that people are sending, let alone what I imagine the
Yeah.
images must be. It's just beyond I mean, it never would have existed when I was growing
And
up.
it's absolutely everywhere. It's on Facebook, it's on Instagram,
Yeah.
it's anywhere. Like,
You can find it everywhere for free.
yeah, it's everywhere. And especially because I think this generation has it even worse because now you have something like a phone and it's just like whenever, wherever, access to anything.
Yeah.
So it makes it even worse.
But we have a whole generation that has grown up thinking that lust is not only acceptable, it's desirable. And so now we have the transgenders leading story time in public libraries. We have them fighting for their rights to be accepted as normal and parading in the streets in the vilest of costumes and
Or just no costume at all.
yeah, I mean, just thinking that anybody would be parading for the right to destroy their own society.
Yeah.
You know, even Isabel there, if she has to go to the bathroom, she goes outside and goes away from the house. She won't spoil her own living quarters. Yet here are these people destroying their own society.
Our dog lives better than most of the
The
LGBT.
dog has more sense than these people do.
Well, you know, and I think the important
That's how we
perspective
raised,
to
right?
keep in mind as well is that even though these people are doing these things, that all of them still need to be reached with the gospel
Yeah.
and, you know, still have a chance of being turned around.
Yeah, but how do we do that? I guess that's going to be our big question in the coming weeks. You know, what is it that bypasses this garbage to get through to the hearts?
Well, it's the whole work of the Holy Spirit, of course, but He maybe puts you in a certain place, a certain time, to plant that seed. He's only asked us to be seed sowers, not to convince really anybody how they should live, but they have to convince themselves.
I think actually he's been so good at convincing people. These people that are doing this stuff, they know it's wrong. They know in their hearts that it's wrong, and they push past it to try to make themselves feel better about it. But they know, especially in the times when they're by themselves, alone in the quiet, they know that the life that they're living is wrong.
They do.
They're sick of themselves, but they don't know how to get out of it. They don't think there's a way out of it because the world's taught them that you're just an animal.
Well, not even that. They think that mindset is something that they've always either had, or they think that that mindset is something that that is natural. That's like because of what other people have said.
Debbie said she has apparently a site she goes to where you can color Bible themes. You can like paint them online. She says she gets pop-up porn ads while she's doing that they show up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's amazing that this stuff has weaseled its way in every way you can imagine.
So she needs to download the
Ad blocker.
ad blocker.
Yeah.
It's a free.
You need
free
an ad
thing.
blocker for your phone? Can you get ad blockers for your phone?
You can.
You get to pay for it.
They get to pay like $1 for it on your phone.
Be well worth it.
I got it on my phone, I think, for free. I think for Android it's free, but like for anything
No, 'cause I
else.
think to actually use it, like it doesn't work on the YouTube app or anything.
Yeah, it
like
doesn't
that.
like you work on YouTube, but it'll work on like searching.
Well, I tell you, I
It
paid
pop.
for
It like blocks like the little side ads, like on Facebook. It'll like block those. It'll like cut those away.
That's good to know. We need to make available some of those resources for people. Something that we've tried
Maybe,
that really
maybe a
works.
series on protecting the gates to the soul.
Absolutely.
That'd be a really good one.
Share
I like
resources
that.
on how to do that.
I like
Good
that.
idea.
That'd be cool. You can actually get like things.
We'll work on that for next week, or go back to the keep.
Well, I mean, we
We
still
should
we
finish
can only
this.
we only touch the surface.
I
For
know.
like we only hit that one verse.
We
I
only
saw.
talked about fornication.
We didn't really talk about that, did we?
No, we just got into a discussion.
Yeah, but I like that idea. There's even like things you can get. Like there's programs on your phone you can get that basically make it. Like, basically, it sends all of the things you search to somebody else's phone, so that
Oh,
they
yeah.
can see that.
Accountability partnership.
Yeah, it's I think it's called like Covenant Eyes.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's like basically it's like anything you search gets flagged and sent to the other person, so that like you can't.
Send it to your mother.
Yeah, it is. It's fun.
Did you look this up if your mom was looking at you?
It's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be like you partner up with your mom or something like that, or someone that you would feel really ashamed who knew or something like that.
Well, if we just had a
something
screen,
like that.
a
Your
screen,
grandma.
a screen thing that we
Why
could
are
put
you
across,
distracting, son?
put across our phones and our televisions that says, "I will set no worthless thing before my eyes."
Well, there goes.
Why don't you just throw away the television?
Yeah.
Have you seen the commercials?
The moral majority doesn't mean they are moral. That's an oxymoron, Susan says.
Oxymoron.
Well, next week should be really interesting. You want to lead out next week too, since you got this going?
Yeah.
Okay.
I figured we would go. It would be like a 4
4
week
parts.
thing.
Okay.
4 or 5. I don't know. It depends.
That's the beauty of doing this, is that we're not bound by any type of particular structure. We can
Yeah, I was just gonna see how fast it goes.
we can plumb the depths. If we get into a Bible section that we feel like we want to go into deeper, we can do that. We're not bound by any schedule, or other than a little bit on time, because we want to keep things to an hour here. We could go a little bit longer if we want to, but
Well, you have to
Yeah, I mean,
upload it
then we
not
got-
more than an hour, but
Then we have midweek meetings and
we'd like to do some midweek meetings.
yeah, midweek study hour kind of thing.
You thinking about doing that?
you could have like a poll on like Facebook or something or wherever to see who has what days available to see what day we should do that midweek.
We could
I'm
involve
not
our.
sure, but I'm thinking with OBS, there is a way we can simultaneously stream it onto Facebook while we're live streaming here too.
Probably you can stream it to Twitch as well if you wanted to, or other places and
I
stuff.
think you can do multiple streams, like you can do Twitch and YouTube and all that simultaneously. It'd be well worth exploring, because we get a little more coverage that way.
Yeah, the message has to go out, and I've got a good marketing program for YouTube that I'm planning on using for Sunburst because I want to start producing videos for Sunburst as well,
Good.
and put together that series on Bible contradictions and stuff.
Great. Sounds like some great projects in the making.
Yeah, just a matter of making sure I prioritize the right things.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
There's so many things that scream for time and attention.
But I guess on that note, we'll close out in a prayer and pick it up next week, and hopefully can figure out some more exciting things to get down the line for our
Susan
home
says
church
this is
group.
what makes this time so fantastic, is that we can explore the depths of whatever the Lord impresses us with.
Yeah, and that the conversation doesn't end when the sermon does, kind of thing,
Right.
which tends to be the case in a lot of traditional settings. But all right, let's bow our heads. Father, thank you so much, and we're excited to learn more.
After we've gotten these insights and these understandings, we know that we need your protection and we need the Spirit to guide us in truth. And that we also need the Spirit to guide us to away from temptation, to give us the strength to resist evil and to walk like your Son did. And we ask that you would send your Spirit to be with us for the rest of the Sabbath day, help our minds to stay focused on you, and help us to get the things in the works, because we know the time is short and that we need to get a work done for you. So we ask that you would help us with these things, protect us, watch over us, and bless our online audience as well. This we ask and pray in the name of your Son. Amen. Well, I guess thank you guys for joining us, and we will look forward to seeing you all